Joining me now is Gerard Filitti, senior counsel at the Lawfare Project. There are a few defendants, as Avajoy kind of walked us through, who have already turned themselves in. I want more specifics on what the surrendering process looks like, especially as we just heard, this response from Fani Willis about how there shouldn't be exceptions. We're going to stick to the book here. So can you walk us through that?
Well, the surrendering process is pretty straightforward, and in all fairness, these defendants are getting a lot more deference than ordinary people who are charged with crimes. Essentially, they're being able to negotiate the terms of their bond before showing up to be booked, which means that there's no expectation that they will be sitting in a cell waiting to be taken to a judge. All of this is determined and agreed upon in advance and signed off by the judge. So they come to the courthouse, they have their fingerprints taken, their mugshot taken, they have a prisoner ID number assigned to them, an intake number, and then since the bond has already been signed off, they're released under the terms of that bond and welcome to come back when it's their turn to have a hearing or other developments in the case. So basically, they come in and they go out, and we expect this to be the same for all the defendants.
Okay, and Avajoy had just mentioned, in the case of seeing the first co-defendant who came in, and it was, an hour, she's still next to me, an hour and a half or something like that? Yeah, an hour and 15 minutes in and out, potentially that's coming in early and not waiting to the last minute to turn yourself in. I'm so curious, and we've been talking about this just, off air, how you navigate this process with 18 folks that still have to go through this. I mean, how does the court make sure it stays on top of every single person, the booking process, and not get bogged up?
Well, largely, I think it's fair to say that all of these people have kind of a direct line to the sheriff's office and through the prosecutor's office. So there are no surprises. You're not just showing up at the courthouse, at the jail unannounced and saying, I'm here to be booked. This has been navigated beforehand, choreographed beforehand, so everyone knows what to expect. And this is not the way a normal booking process works. Normally, you're sitting in the cell until it's your turn to be processed. That may take an hour. That may take more, depending on how many people are also there. But because these are going through essentially outside channels, it's like skipping the line and being processed directly on an appointment basis. That's what allows this to move so expeditiously. And quite frankly, this is not unreasonable given the gravity of the situation and the amount of public scrutiny it's receiving, because we don't want situations where we have hundreds or thousands of people lining up at the courthouse ready to protest or do God knows what, waiting for these people to be processed. So everyone is interested in seeing this process move swiftly, and that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, swiftly, safely, choreography, as you're mentioning. To that point, actually, when we talk about how high level and high stakes as far as the people that were involved in this, part of the bond agreement, if we can turn to that for Trump, is that he cannot speak to or intimidate any of the witnesses or co-defendants. What consequences, if any, would he face if he doesn't follow that? I mean, what can the courts really do? Accountability is a big question that I have in regards to this.
Well, that's a really good question, because what the courts can do might be different than what they're willing to do in this case. Defendants who violate these conditions usually are given a stern talking to by the judge and warned not to do it again. But then if they continue persisting in this behavior, they can very well have the terms of their bond revoked. They can be found to be in contempt, they can be assessed penalties, but more importantly, they can be taken into custody. Now, the question is, there will always be pushback from Donald Trump especially. He will push the envelope as far as he can. We know this because this is what he's been doing for 5 or 6 years now. But the tolerance of the judge for this behavior is what's really at issue. So I expect that Trump will get some leeway in what he says, but he can't push it to the point where an ordinary person would understand a threat against the juror, against the prosecutor, against anyone involved in the system, because then there will be consequences, and the severity of those consequences might include having bail revoked and being requested to somehow surrender to, not necessarily to be in prison, but to have home confinement or some other conditions placed on his release.
Okay, I'm keeping in mind also, some of the comments that have been made regarding in the federal case, Judge Tanya Chutkin and things like that. So thank you for taking that. Final question here before we run out of time. Trump has said that he will turn himself in on Thursday. What can we expect that day? And is it likely that we'll see a mugshot of the GOP frontrunner?
Well, I think even though the sheriff has said that he will be treated the same as everyone else, that is still very much in question. We don't know, quite frankly, whether he will have his mugshot taken or whether it will be disclosed. I think the purpose of a mugshot is to be able to identify a defendant, and everyone in the world knows what Donald Trump looks like, so that's not the essential thing. If anything, it creates more theater because Trump will use that for campaigning and for other purposes. So it might be counterproductive to actually release a mugshot or disclose that. What we can expect on Thursday, he will walk in and walk out within 2 hours, not much fanfare. He will not be brought before the judge. He will just basically be escorted in, processed, and escorted back out. The same as we've seen everywhere else. We will have a circus of media trying to get a picture and ask questions, and then we will have the iconic image of the Trump airplane getting back to Bedminster or wherever it is that Trump wants to go. It'll be a smooth process, and we unfortunately don't expect much speaking or opportunity to interact.
Okay, I mean, you just painted that picture. I can imagine it, and I'll be watching Thursday. I'm sure we'll chat on Thursday. Gerard Filitti, Senior Counsel at the Lawfare Project. Thank you so much. And
Thank
still
you, Lauren.
ahead.